Stay tuned for another Newscenter88 presentation on WMUL FM Huntington. And now, the Newscenter88 Weekend Recap, covering the top stories around the globe, tri-state, and across the campus of Marshall University. And now, the Newscenter88 Weekend Recap team.
Welcome to the Newscenter88 Weekend Recap. I'm Luke Hamilton.
And I'm Emma Johnson. Coming up on this edition of Weekend Recap, Waylon Smith will be in with this week's weather forecast, and John Boggess will be in with a recap of the week that was in Marshall athletics.
Now on to our top story. The Treasury Department plans to impose more than 500 new sanctions on Russia and its war machine, as the U.S. vows to keep up its financial pressure on Moscow with the war entering its third grueling year. The sanctions represent the largest single tranche of penalties since Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022. They come on the heels of a series of new arrests and indictments announced by the Justice Department that target Russian businessmen and their middlemen in 5 separate federal cases. The Biden administration is seeking to demonstrate its unwavering support for Ukraine, even though Republican lawmakers allied with former President Donald Trump are blocking vital additional U.S. military aid. President Biden commented on the sanctions after meeting with Alexei Navalny's widow and daughter.
As to state the obvious, he was a man of incredible courage, and it's amazing how his wife and daughter are emulating that. And we're going to be announcing the sanctions against Putin, who is responsible for his death, tomorrow.
More than 29,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza in the 5-month Israel-Hamas war. The Gaza Health Ministry in the Hamas-ruled territory said that 107 bodies were brought to hospitals in the last 24 hours, which brings the total to 29,092 dead since the start of the war. The ministry does not distinguish between civilians and combatants in its records, but says most of those killed were women and children. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to continue the offensive until, quote, total victory, unquote, against Hamas after the militants' October 7th attack on Israeli communities. Israel has said its troops will soon move into the southernmost town of Rafah, where many Palestinians have sought refuge from fighting elsewhere. Some of Israel's leaders are warning that fast action is required.
And Hamas leaders must know, if by Ramadan hostages are not home, the fighting will continue everywhere to include Rafah area.
The latest figures from the National Police show that more than 30,000 people have been reported missing in Ukraine during 2 years of war. Among them are military personnel, civilians, and children. Tens of thousands of people have disappeared under a variety of circumstances, their whereabouts unknown.
Since February 2022, our teams have been contacted over 100,000 times by families. That, of course, several families call us every day or several times. That doesn't mean 100,000 missing people, but this gives you an idea of just the amount of suffering that this creates on both sides.
The families endure excruciating uncertainty, desperately seeking any sign of their missing loved ones. For many, this agonizing quest has persisted for the duration of Russia's unprovoked war aimed at seizing Ukraine.
Coming up next, Supreme Court seems skeptical of EPA's Good Neighbor rule on power plant pollution. Stay with us for a recap of news from across the tri-state when Weekend Recap returns right after this.
The best news program in the nation as honored by the National Broadcasting Society. More than 130 live Marshall sporting events every year. One of the top college radio stations in the nation. 50 years of broadcasting excellence. 88.1 WMUL FM.
Welcome back to the Newscenter88 Weekend Recap. I'm Luke Hamilton.
And I'm Emma Johnson. The Supreme Court's conservative majority appears skeptical of the federal government's argument that the Environmental Protection Agency should be allowed to continue enforcing its anti-air pollution rule in 11 states. The government made its arguments Wednesday before the court, and the Good Neighbor rule is intended to restrict smokestack emissions from power plants and other industrial sources that burden downwind areas with smog-causing pollution. 3 energy-producing states, Ohio, Indiana, and West Virginia, challenged the rule along with steel industries and other groups. They called it costly and ineffective. The rule is on hold in a dozen other states because of separate legal challenges. Supporters said the rule protects downwind states from receiving unwanted pollution.
As technology continues to advance and become more complex, so do the scammers that use it to their advantage. As Trevor Smith reports, scammers have sent emails to those they hope will unknowingly give account access by entering personal information.
Phishing emails have begun flooding the inboxes of Marshall University students and professors looking to steal information.
Phishing email tries to get you to click on a link and enter your data basically, and then they just log in with whatever you send them.
I've gotten several to my Marshall email. I'm not sure how many, but I've gotten them a lot more this past semester.
Referred to as bad actors, the phishers use time-sensitive false promises to make a sense of urgency in those who receive the emails.
As I've paid attention and tried to figure it out to make sure that I avoid that, but I can see how it would be really easy for someone else to not and just think they need some of their account authenticated or anything and just get their information totally stolen.
I've gotten a couple emails saying great job opportunity, click here, you can start immediately, pays great, no resume needed. And I work here, my mom works here, and she told me that they've gotten a lot of students that have been clicking on them, and then obviously it's a scam.
Phishing not only happens on student emails and faculty email, but also carries over to social media.
Definitely on social media. I know that's been a big problem with a lot of my friends getting their accounts hacked.
Marshall's IT says to carefully inspect unknown emails and avoid clicking links that have unknown destinations. For Newscenter88, I'm Trevor Smith.
Thanks, Trevor. Any student who believes they may have given up a password can first try to change them and report any suspicious emails to Marshall's IT department.
Coming up next, Biden says too many Americans are saddled with school debt as he cancels federal loans for $153,000. Stay with us for a recap of news across the nation when Weekend Recap returns right after this.
Are you tired of missing your favorite WMUL programming? No worries. Check out WMUL's online archive at marshall.edu/WMUL. Every episode of our news and sports programming, every story from the Newscenter88 and FM88 sports teams, and much more. Marshall.edu/WMUL.
Welcome back to the Newscenter88 Weekend Recap. I'm Luke Hamilton.
And I'm Emma Johnson. West Virginia's Republican-led House of Delegates has approved a bill that would cut and gradually phase out the state income tax on Social Security benefits. Eliminating the tax is a key priority for GOP Governor Jim Justice, who announced it as part of his budget proposal during his final State of the State address last month. The proposal, which now heads to the Senate, would eliminate the tax for everyone else, also over a 3-year period. In 2019, the legislature passed a bill cutting the state income tax on Social Security benefits for the state's lowest earners over 3 years.
4 foreign nationals have been arrested and charged with transporting suspected Iranian-made weapons after U.S. naval forces interdicted a vessel in the Arabian Sea last month. 2 Navy SEALs died during the mission. The criminal complaint alleges that the 4 defendants were transporting suspected Iranian-made missile components for the type of weapons used by Houthi rebels forces in recent attacks. They were all carrying Pakistani identification cards. U.S. officials said that the Navy Special Warfare Operator First Class Christopher J. Chambers was boarding the boat on January 11th and slipped into the gap created by high waves between the vessel and the SEALs' combatant craft. As Chambers fell, Navy Special Warfare Operator Second Class Nathan Gage Ingram jumped in to try to save him.
President Joe Biden says that while a college degree is still a ticket to a better life, that ticket is often too expensive. He spoke at a library in Culver City, California, where he announced he was canceling federal student loans for nearly 153,000 borrowers. Biden said he made it a priority to fix the nation's student loan system and is putting the spotlight on his debt cancellation efforts as he ramps up his re-election campaign. The administration began sending email notifications to some of the borrowers who will benefit from what the White House has called the SAFE program.
Coming up next, Waylon Smith will be in with this week's weather forecast, and John Boggess will be in with a recap of the week that was in Marshall athletics. Stay with us.
Does showing up for work at a ballpark or an arena sound good to you? A Marshall University sports journalism degree can get you there. Sports journalism in Marshall is important. It's serious and it's big business. Sports media and communications careers are some of the most competitive and marketable worldwide in a multi-billion-dollar industry. We'll prepare you to think critically, report accurately, and artfully tell the stories on and off the field or court. If this sounds like you, the Marshall School of Journalism is ready and eager to start your journey. Learn more at marshall.edu/SOJMC.
Welcome back to Newscenter88's Weekend Recap. I'm Waylon Smith, and now it's time for this week's weather forecast. After a week of partly cloudy weather and some scattered storms, we turn towards a just as varied weekend. Looking towards Saturday, we'll see a chance of rain and snow showers in the morning, with a chance of snow continuing through to the midday and gradually clearing into the evening. We can expect highs near the lower 40s with lows around 23 degrees later into the night. As Sunday approaches, we'll see a much anticipated change of sunny skies with highs reaching near 56 degrees and dipping into the lower 40s with a 30% chance of rain later into the night. As we look towards next week, we'll see continued temperatures between the 40s and 70s, and we're almost guaranteed to have more rain headed our way. Your weather word of the weekend is troposphere. The troposphere is the lowest part of the atmosphere, extending from the surface up to a height varying from about 4 miles at polar regions to 12 miles in the tropics. Thank you to weatherology.com for that information. And that concludes this week's weather forecast. For Newscenter88, I'm Waylon Smith.
Thanks, Waylon. Now John Boggess joins us with a recap of the week that was in Marshall athletics.
Thanks, Luke. After an off week and a 3-game road stretch, the Marshall Thundering Herd men's basketball team competed Wednesday at the Cam Henderson Center for the first time in 18 days. The homecoming resulted in a tough loss to the James Madison Dukes, 84-58. Marshall would take the first points of the game with a 3-pointer from Jacob Connor, assisted by Camden Kerfman. But then JMU responded with an 11-0 scoring run. With less than 5 minutes to go in the first half, Marshall would cut JMU's lead to 3 after Nate Martin's and 1 free throw was good. JMU would quickly build its lead back up and finish the half with a 12-point lead over Marshall, 39-27. Despite scoring the first points of the second half, Marshall would not be able to build enough momentum to come close to JMU. JMU would extend its lead to 20 3 times in the second half and hold off the Herd in the final minutes, securing a program record 26-point victory. Marshall, who now sits at 8th in the conference standings, had multiple multi-minute scoring droughts in the contest and only made 20 of its 64 shots. Despite the loss, Marshall forward Nate Martin recorded his 14th double-double of the season, with 12 points and a career-high 16 rebounds. The Herd will look to end its current 4-game slide Saturday at the Cam Henderson Center, but will have to get past a team who sits atop the Sun Belt Conference standings, App State. The Marshall women's basketball team achieved a historic milestone in its 85-59 road victory against Texas State Wednesday. The Herd surpassed 20 regular season wins for the first time since the 1990-91 season in the victory. Kim Caldwell now holds the most wins by a first-year head coach in Marshall women's basketball program history. Marshall held Texas State to only 5 points in the second quarter, scoring 27 of its own. The Herd also had a season-high 17 3-pointers, with Sydney Scott scoring 6 of them. Scott and Abby Beeman led in scoring, each with a total of 18 points. Marshall, who is now 14-1 in conference play, holds on to its first-place standing in the Sun Belt Conference, leading by 2 wins. Marshall will finish its 4-game road stretch against ULM Saturday, before playing its final 2 games of the season at home. The Marshall track and field team concluded the indoor season Tuesday at the Sun Belt Conference Indoor Championships. The Marshall women's team finished 4th with 61 points, and the men's team finished 7th with 19 points. Graduate student Abby Herring won the 5K championship and the mile championship. Junior Tyra Thomas set a new school record in 60-meter hurdles with a time of 8.33 seconds. Next, the herd preps for the outdoor season with the first meet beginning March 14th at the Charlotte 49ers Classic. That's all for the FM88 Sports Report. For FM88 Sports, I'm John Boggess.
That concludes this edition of Newscenter 88's Weekend Recap. Tune in next week for a weekly recap of the top stories from around the globe, tri-state area, and across the campus of Marshall University.
You can always watch this newscast on JMC TV or WMUL Radio's YouTube channels.
I'm Emma Johnson.
And I'm Luke Hamilton. Have a great week.